This is Hardy Brute, and today I'm going to be playing Dungeon Warfare 3, a tower defense game with a ton of different towers, lots of different upgrades, and the ability to customize and even upgrade each of those towers however you want map by map. With each map, you get to choose your loadout for that map specifically. You can reset the upgrades that you've already chosen, and there's also sigils that are like passive effects later on. So there's a lot to be offered, but I'm really excited to play and explore this game, find the towers that we like, and upgrade them to the max. Another unique aspect to this game is there's interactables on the map. In this case there's explosive barrels, but sometimes there's a big boulder, there's already built-in traps, there's all sorts of things unique map to map. The maps range quite a bit in difficulty and length, but the early on waves here, you can see the waves on the left, it only goes up to 6. And at the top it lists how many units are on the field at one given point. But these early on missions are more about getting to the end, trying to complete the map without losing any life, because if you get a flawless victory, then you get 3 upgrade points to spend on your current towers. But in later maps there are unique objectives, where you could replay with higher difficulties, more life, more troops, to try to complete for even more rewards. You can also slam the wave at the bottom left at any time you want to speed up the waves and speed up the troops. So we got 2 units that broke all the way to the end, but we have some mercenaries here at the bottom that came with the map. So even though we couldn't buy any more towers, we could still take care of those last few enemies that ran all the way through. And we got 3 rubies for upgrades. So you actually build out your map, your levels yourself. And let's go on to level number 2. As sometimes the maps, especially early on, are very quick and short, which adds to the progression quite a bit. We've got enemies that are going to be spawning left and right later on. But let's spend our crystals here. Every 5 levels in each trap gives you a trait for that trap. The Dark Trap gains 15% damage per level, and the Spike Trap gains 10% damage, but a 0.8% rearm speed. Traits are pretty unique because it gives you 3 different offerings to really customize your traps, and sometimes they are radically different from one another. But I chose the Spike Trap because it does an area effect damage, even though the buff is a bit weaker. So let's choose the corners where we're going to hit a lot of enemies. The map is usually the hardest the first time you play it, until you add your own difficulty elements to it, because every time you play a map, you get to keep all of your upgrades, all of your towers, all of the starting gold bonus, all the things that you've unlocked, with every new attempt. And look at this push tower here. It just one-shots them and launches them into the water. That's probably my favorite tower so far. And that's part of the map, so we haven't actually unlocked it yet. But that is very cool. Let's put a dart tower because they're getting pretty close to the end here. The bonus objective for clearing this map is to do it within 2 minutes. But at our current strength, I'm not sure we can actually make it to the end if we start speeding things up. But we'll just come back here when we have a ton of upgrades and make this much easier. And just to test, going to 4 times speed doesn't actually decrease the game time requirement. So the only way to get it under 2 minutes would be to speed up the wave. Destroy the enemies while they're spawning outside their spawn zones. But the Spike Trap is currently doing 3.6 damage, instead of just the 3. And our little Fireball man, who's kind of like the narrator, the storyteller. He actually helps destroy a unit every so often as well. Probably every 10 to 15 seconds. Our Spike Traps did work in this fight. We've taken out most of the units, it's the final wave. And a few of them slipped to the end, but our extra Spike Traps took care of it. So we got another flawless victory, 3 more rupees, and we unlocked the barricade. That will actually give us control over the path of the units. But for getting XP, just for playing, we got an extra trap slot, we get 2 gems, and 100 starting gold. And that affects all the maps we've played so far. Clear with a Fort, Swarm, or Scythe rune, and a level 4 Wrath. Well, we don't have runes unlocked yet. But this is with some of the objectives not being possible until you play them later on. Each upgrade actually costs more and more gems per level. And the barricade just gets more durability. So does that mean that the enemies are going to attack the barricades? Because that's not a good thing. I leveled up our spike trap to level 4, and I saved the gems to level up to number 5 after this fight. But because you can actually reroll the upgrades you choose at any point, I probably should have just upgraded the dart to level 2. So currently they're taking the short path straight to the core, so let's block it off. So now they're taking a longer path, and we can also use the one-time use boulder to clear out all the troops in its path. Let's set up a couple spike traps on these corners, and let's start the wave. The harpoon trap launches a huge harpoon, pulls the victims towards it, and when they're being pulled by multiple harpoons, they take tear damage. That tower looks amazing. The map also comes with a vault in the middle, where treasure's inside. That's what our harpoon is actually attacking right now. So let's set up a second dart tower, and maybe try help to destroying the vault. Let's see what's inside. Could just be a bunch of gold. We unlocked a new consumable trap. I like the little ballad. Consumable traps are free, but they have a cooldown. Deals heavy damage to a single unit. It also destroyed our pathing here. But it only targets a single unit, but it does so much damage, it's probably going to one-shot anything that it does hit. And that's also an unlock that we get on every single map going forward now. But our pathing is a bit better now. And every 9 seconds, we get a trap that'll just one-shot any unit that happens to walk over it. So that's a pretty strong ability. There's a chain trap right next to the boulder. It only does 1 damage, but it'll hinder and keep enemies entangled for a long duration. So it's similar to the harpoon, but does less damage. But I imagine the hinder effect is a lot stronger. But I still like the harpoon quite a bit more, especially because it can stack with itself. And it looks like there's a combo mechanic. So if you destroy enough units back to back, you'll get a ton of free gold. We got 500 just for the first level. We're linking here a bit, so I might end up using the boulder here. But our spike trap did take care of it. Unfortunately, we can only use the boulder once, so we have to really decide when to use it. But against the heavy knights that have a lot of armor, a lot of HP, are probably the best units to use it on. Just take them out before they can actually do any damage to us. We're on wave 7 of 9, and we always have to remember to use our consumable every 9 seconds or so. But wave 8 is pretty big, and there's a lot of knights in the back there. And we no longer have a boulder to protect us. But I have been able to buy a few spike traps since we used the boulder. And wave 9 is even bigger, with even more knights in the back. But our spikes are still doing work, even against the heavy HP knights. And the mercenaries that the game gave us are coming in very clutch at this point. We've only got around 10 more knights to take out, and I think it's actually looking pretty good. Our Flame Boy really didn't help too much this level. I am pretty disappointed in him, even when he's praising us. We got another Flawless, 3 more rubies. Ooh, we unlocked the push trap, unlocked the snare, and got our first sigil, the Rain, making all enemies take 10% more damage. So let's look at the Plains card. Gives us 50 more starting gold. And I guess you can customize the field along with the levels, which I like that aspect quite a bit, but I'm not all for micromanaging that, especially when I have to micromanage the dungeons as well. All the traps, that's where I want to focus my attention. But you can relocate most of those things later on, and there's also a point where you can just tell the game to automatically place the lands, which is what I'm going to do until I try to min-max it. So let's get the level 5 spike trap, and look at these trades. Increased damage, faster reload speed, 100% more damage but only when it's attacking 5 enemies, applies a debuff to increase the damage by all other traps. So those are pretty cool. I think the Swift Mechanism, which will increase the damage and the reload, is just the generic buff so far. But if we can see the other traits later on, I'm sure there are synergies between all three of them. Doing extra damage to less enemies sounds pretty awesome as well. The Spellbound Arsenal summons 2 dancing swords, that sounds really cool. And they're kind of like semi-mercenaries. But we get that unlocked just for this map. So let's put a bunch of push traps here in front of the giant pit. Once again, we got enemies coming from the left and the right, and we actually have 2 different cores to protect. So the maps are getting wider and more complex, and the waves are getting longer. And I like that a lot, but we're also unlocking more and more things to even do. So let's explode the barrel. And it actually took out that temporary block over here. The game did warn you that those blocks were temporary or destroyable, but that also means that any traps that you place on top would also be lost. I'm really glad to have a map to utilize the pushing towers so much, because look at them just being launched. The distance is so far, and that's only its base form, a level 1. Each upgrade I think increases the cooldown as well as the distance that they go. So we can have a lot of fun with those push towers. A couple unique aspects to this map is there's a gold generator in the middle, which says the enemies will destroy it if they get close, and there's also these rail carts that will also do 2 damage whenever they run into an enemy. But now that we have a level 5 spike trap, and we picked a trait, we have to spend another 600 gold to upgrade the spike trap in order to use that trait. So that's something to keep in mind. The enemies spawning on the left seem to go to the right core, and the enemies spawning on the right go to the left core, but they both run to this middle section here, making our spike traps do a lot of damage, and the push traps being very effective. But even then, sometimes they're making it all the way to the right side. And the mercenaries in the carts are holding them back at the moment, but they could break through if we don't keep upgrading. Because even then we still leaked 4 knights there. But the cart pushback is keeping us in the game. And the bonus objective is to destroy a tome, which I'm not sure where it is. It might be this square thing at the top. And to use the blood and fort ruins, which would just increase the difficulty. Well, I don't think we have the fort or blood rune unlocked. So a lot of these maps we're going to have to replay. But we'll start with level 5, 10, 15 towers, and it should be crazy easy. This 2 or 3 minute map could take like 30 seconds, and that'll be really fun. Because the upgrades aren't small. 10, 20, 30%. Changing the base damage from 3 to 6 is huge. And we've got quite a nice path going here now. I'm not a big fan of these very fast, almost roguelike units that just sprint towards the end here. All of the mercenaries we got are gone, but now we have some floating swords, and that might stall enough time. But this is the final wave, and we actually made it. We were also distracted enough not to use our cooldown trap all that much in that fight. But we got 3 crystals, we unlocked the spell arsenal, and the blood rune, which we needed the blood rune for that challenge. So that is perfect. We got more XP and a level up, 3 free gems, and 100 more starting gold. And now we have just so many cards, which I both love and hate. I love the fact that you can customize and affect yourself, increase the XP of dungeons around, but I hate the fact that you're actually being punished if you don't min-max. Traps in the dungeons are cheaper, increase starting gold if it's on a mountain, gain access to a shop, plus 5 free gems. So I use the auto placement, but the buildings themselves aren't actually active until you have 3 of the same type next to one another, which at that point you can reclaim and place them wherever you actually want. But we unlock the blood rune, 20% more XP, but we only get 1 life. So let's spend our gems, upgrade the spellbound arsenal, make the mercenaries have 10% more HP per level. And we actually have enough gems to get it all the way to level 5. So we can increase their damage by 50%, which isn't great, they shouldn't really be doing damage. Increase the max number to 3, and 30% more life, I like that a lot. Bounty plus 5. On death, deal damage to an enemy equal to its maximum health. I like that one quite a bit too. It's just an explode on death mechanic. But let's upgrade the push trap to level 2. It'll increase the damage by 15% and the push force by 9%. Let's move on to level 5. And once again, we have a tower unlocked for free just on this stage, the Arcane Trap, and it starts as a level 2 bonus. It acts very similarly to the Summoning Swords, but instead of summoning swords, it summons little explosions. But something unique about this map is there's a Soul Harvester in the middle, and a Poison Trap on the right. We also get to place our core wherever we want this time. And because it's a mirror image, it's either the top left or the bottom right corner. But if we go with the top left, by placing the core top left, we'll have units walking past the Soul Harvester, which will give us free income, and the Poison Trap, which will give us free damage. So I'm going to focus most of my traps early on, next to the Soul Harvester. Try to generate as much free income as we can, because they'll spawn from the left first, and then the right. And hopefully by the time they're spawning from the right, we'll have enough income, enough traps set up, that we can protect that shorter path all the way to the core. But I'm going to try very hard to use our cooldown traps as often as we can. I've tried this map a few times, and we definitely need the extra help. But originally I was trying the core in the bottom right corner, and we only really took advantage of the Poison Trap. And we lost out on all the extra income. Well, let's start making the Arcane Traps. It is a more spendy building, but it hits in an area effect. And it's one of the ways to get past a lot of the armor units, the big heavy knights. Something I've recently noticed is if you end up building the same trap, the same tower, over and over and over, eventually it'll start costing more and more. And their base cost is the same for the first 5 towers, but after that I think the cost increases by 10% for each additional tower. So you really want a balanced team, a balanced loadout, and lots of options to choose from. Because the Arcane already costs 990 from 900. But it's a level 2 tower, and it's really good for this map, so I think I'm still going to keep buying it, even though it's costing more and more. Because there's big, heavy, slow units in this one that have a bunch of armor, a bunch of health, and they can't even be pushed around by push traps very easily. So the Arcane Traps actually cut through that armor and do 5 damage per hit, and they're pretty good against them. I had tried very hard to use these spike traps around with a bunch of push traps again, but those big heavies just cannot be pushed, and they just slowly walked to our core and destroyed us. So this was the best approach I found so far with our current setup. We probably could have used the push if I had reallocated all of our gems and put them all under our push towers. But even then I'm not 100% sure, because those big behemoths are just so slow and heavy. They were definitely my first wall, and the Arcane Trap is already up to almost 1200. But if we replay this map, even just after beating this the first time, we'll have 3 more gems, and this will be even easier. So it's usually the first attempt that is the worst. That was a perfect boulder. Took out so many behemoths, took out a ton of units. And I'm just using these sword towers to keep the units in place, to keep taking damage. And I'm not really sure it's worth upgrading them for a 3rd sword, until we have other upgraded buildings around them, like these spike traps, that can do damage to them while they're stuck in place. I think it's better just to build more towers, unless we run out of room. But we're already on the final and 12th wave. We're dealing with the behemoths, and they're slowly making progress. But if we break through here, I think this is going to be the end of them. We also still have 1 emergency boulder as well. But I think we finally got this one. And the final wave doesn't look like there was any behemoths from this spawn on the left. It was just the normal units, which are pretty easy to deal with. So there's no more units, let's just roll the boulder down and end the fight. So we got 3 gems, unlock the Arcane Trap, which I like a lot, and the Fort Rune. The enemies have 20% more health. I'm not the biggest fan of that challenge, but we got another level, even more gems, more starting gold. 2650, that's how much gold we start with. And we got a ton of cards again. So let's auto-place them down for now, and get an extra 5 free gems. And the library, which gives you custom loadouts for your loadouts. And let's make the 6th dungeon. And currently we don't have any of the pink, but the shop that we unlocked gives us access to new cards, new spells. Dungeons suffered reduced movement, reduced health. Every 200 enemies give you more soul fragments, so this is how you could generate it if we had 1,000. You can also buy new traps, the spring trap. Some new runes. Enemy armor is half. Enemy health at 10% or less will die instantly. I like that. Decrease the barricade cost by 100. Increase your trap slots. The first one was actually free. And unlock additional sigil spots. Well, I've never played Dungeon Warfare 1 or 2, but Dungeon Warfare 3 is a really fun game. And there's so many different things to unlock and customize. So I hope you enjoyed. But if you'd like to see more, let me know. But I definitely want to play more of this. So I'll see you later.